Welcome to BLF1 News. Let's talk about the team-by-team analysis of Sunday's season opening Bahrain Formula One Grand Prix, listed in championship order. Red Bull, Max Verstappen finished first, and Sergio Perez finished in second position. Verstappen won a season opener for the first time, and added Bahrain to his list of victories in a dream start to his bid for a third successive title. He started on pole for the 21st time in his career, with Perez alongside, and cruised to a dominant 36th career win. Perez lost out to Leclerc at the start but recovered the position later. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso finished in third, Lance Stroll finished in sixth position. Alonso was voted driver of the day. He started fifth for his first race with Aston Martin following his move from Alpine, passed Hamilton and went wheel-to-wheel with Sainz for the final podium spot. Stroll started 8th, 2 weeks after he broke both wrists and a toe in a cycling accident. The Canadian clipped the back of Alonso's car at turn 4 on the opening lap, with the Spaniard dropping to 7th but fighting back. Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton finished in 5th and George Russell finished in 7th. Russell started 6th and Hamilton 7th, with the latter gaining 2 places at the start. Both ran a hard tyre strategy. A slow first pit stop dropped Russell to 8th, but he moved back up when Leclerc retired. Ferrari, Carlos Sainz finished 4th, and Charles Leclerc had to retire. Leclerc and Sainz started on the second row, with the Monegasque using a fresh set of soft tyres saved from qualifying to take second from Perez into the first corner. Leclerc then pulled over with a loss of power 17 laps from the end. Sainz inherited third but was passed by Alonso on fresher tyres. Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas finished in 8th, and Guan Yu Zhou finished 16th. Bottas made a great start from 12th on the grid and managed to stay ahead of Gasly at the finish. Zhou set the fastest lap on the soft tyre on the penultimate lap of the race but without gaining the bonus point, as he finished outside the top 10. Alpine, Pierre Gasly finished in 9th, Esteban Ocon had to retire. Gasly scored after starting his first race for Alpine at the back of the grid after his qualifying lap was deleted for a track limits breach. He made the first pit stop on lap 10 and then 2 more. Ocon collected a 5-second penalty for being out of his grid position and was then handed a further 10-second penalty for serving the first one incorrectly. A third 5-second penalty followed for speeding in the pit lane. Williams, Alex Albon finished in 10th and Logan Sargent finished in 12th. Albon scored a point from 15th on the grid as Williams closed the gap among the tailenders. US rookie Sargent started 16th and had a solid debut. AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda finished in 11th place, and NYCK De Vries finished in 14th place. Tsunoda lost some positions at the start to the Williams drivers and struggled to match their straight-line speed. He made his last pit stop during a virtual safety car period. De Vries made his second F1 start and first as a full-time driver, from the back row. Haas, Kevin Magnussen 13, Nico Hülkenberg 15. Hülkenberg, starting a full season for the first time since 2019, was 6th fastest in qualifying but started 10th after having his lap deleted for exceeding track limits. He then dropped to 15th after making contact with Ocon's Alpine on the first lap, damaging his front wing. McLaren, Lando Norris finished in 17th, and Oscar Piastri had to retire. Piastri retired on his debut after pitting on lap 14. The Australian needed a new steering wheel but the car could not get going again and he was wheeled into the garage. Norris qualified 11th, a grid position he reckoned was about the best he could do with the car lacking downforce. 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix, Race Tyre Analysis. 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix, Race Tyre Analysis. Red Bull brought home a 1-2 at the opening race of the 2023 season. The Bahrain Grand Prix was won by Max Verstappen, who crossed the finish line on the hard tyres. His teammate Sergio Perez and Aston Martin's Fernando Alonso were also on the podium, using the hard for the final stint as well. Race conditions today were very similar to those seen in qualifying on Saturday, with 30 degrees Celsius of track temperature and almost no wind. All the teams stopped at least twice. Tyre choices varied for the central stints, but the majority of drivers finished the race on the hard compound. For teams took advantage of a virtual safety car to make a third pit stop for the soft tyre. Alpine's Pierre Gasly was the only one of them to score points, ending up ninth. Red Bull and Ferrari, fighting for the top positions for a large part of the race, opted for different strategies. Both teams started on the soft, but Red Bull chose the soft tyres again for the second stint, while Ferrari went for the hard. Both teams then chose the hard for the final stint, with Ferrari stopping slightly earlier than its rivals. Alfa Romeo's Guan Yu Zhu set the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute and 33.996 seconds, on the soft tyre but didn't score an extra championship point as he was running outside the top 10. The fastest lap set on the new hard tyre was from Alonso, who did a 1 minute and 36.156 seconds. The only driver not to take the soft tyre for the start was Haas's Kevin Magnussen, who chose a new set of hards instead. The first driver to stop was Pierre Gasly, Alpine, who took on hard tyres on laps 9 and 25. Red Bull was the only team to complete a soft-hard strategy, with Williams doing something similar before making an extra stop for softs on lap 40. Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, AlphaTauri, and both Haas cars also pitted under the virtual safety car, caused by a stoppage for Charles Leclerc, Ferrari. Aston Martin ran the same strategy as the Ferrari drivers for Alonso, going from soft to hard on lap 14, and then completing the race on hard after a second stop. McLaren's Lando Norris was the sole driver to use the P0 yellow medium C2. Hear what Mario Isola, the motorsport director, has to say about the race strategies. He said the race strategies played out largely as expected at the first Grand Prix of the new season. All the teams stopped at least twice, but we saw a number of different choices for the second and third stints. The key compound today was the new P0 White Hard C1, which we introduced for this year. It worked exactly as anticipated, with performance in line with the data gathered over the last few days as well as during pre-season testing. The P0 Red Soft C3 instead showed less degradation than indicated by the previous data, probably influenced by track evolution as well. Congratulations to Red Bull for choosing a unique alternative strategy that helped them to seal a 1-2, as well as to Aston Martin, also on the podium. 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix, Race Tyre Analysis. Motorsport Week's F1 2023 Bahrain GP Driver Ratings. Max Verstappen, 9.5. Qualified, P1, Race, P1. The reigning world champion made it count when it mattered in qualifying to claim pole position relatively comfortably, and he was then utterly flawless throughout the race. He had it easy, but the true greats tend to make a habit of winning in dominant cars look even easier than it is. Related posts. Red Bull drivers criticize introduction of new F1 qualifying tyre format. Red Bull drivers criticize introduction of new F1 qualifying tyre format. 42 minutes ago. Hill praises Stroll Sr. for proving everyone wrong. Hill praises Stroll Sr. for proving everyone wrong. 2 hours ago. Sergio Perez, 8. Qualified, P2, race, P2. Perez could count himself unfortunate that starting on the dirty side of the grid meant he immediately dropped behind Charles Leclerc, and lost the chance to challenge Verstappen. His closeness to Verstappen in qualifying under 2/10 was the most promising sign of his weekend, especially when Perez is likely to be the only driver who can stop the Dutchman on the evidence of the relative pace shown in Bahrain. Charles Leclerc, 9. Qualified, P3, race, DNF. The Ferrari star produced arguably as impressive a drive as anything that was seen on Sunday considering the performance he pulled off in the machinery he had. Having elected to save a fresh set of soft tyres in qualifying, it looked to be an inspired decision when Leclerc executed the start superbly to steal second place away from Perez. However, he was powerless to defend against a dominant Red Bull equipped with softer tyres in the second stint. From that point onwards, the Monegasque driver managed the tyres expertly to be well clear of the chasing pack, and on course for a comfortable third place until cruel fate intervened. Carlos Sainz, 5.5. Qualified, P4, race, P4. Despite positive remarks emanating from the Spaniard during pre-season, Sainz struggled all weekend to match the pace of Leclerc, arguably even more than last year. Sainz was troubled immensely by the tyre troubles his teammate combated, which led to him ceding a podium place to the charging Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso in the closing stages. Lewis Hamilton, 7. Qualified, P7, race, P5. Having been marginally pipped in qualifying by his teammate George Russell, a strong start granted Hamilton the race-changing platform to come home as the lead Mercedes runner. Ultimately, Mercedes' pre-race fears about the lackluster pace of the W14 came true as both drivers tried unsuccessfully to fend off a faster Aston Martin package. Profiting from unreliability striking Ferrari to clinch a top 5 finish was all the 7-time champion could realistically muster with the substandard machinery at his disposal. George Russell, 6.5. Qualified, P6, race, P7. Despite coming out on top in the intra-team Mercedes battle on Saturday, a more sluggish opening lap than Hamilton witnessed him slip behind his more experienced team leader. That would ultimately be Russell's primary undoing as it led to the Brit receiving secondary treatment on strategy, thus paving the way for Lance Stroll to utilize an undercut to eventually pass the Mercedes, dropping him down to 7th. Esteban Ocon, 5. Qualified, P9, race, DNF. A weekend to forget is the best summary of how the beginning of Ocon's 4th year with the Enstone-based outfit developed. A fantastic qualifying effort had heralded him a starting spot inside the points, but his good work from the previous day counted for nothing when a starting infringement landed him a 5-second time penalty. An operational mess on Alpine's behalf saw him collect a further penalty before Ocon compounded his own misery when he was caught on the wrong side of the regulations for a 3rd time for speeding in the pit lane. Pierre Gasly, 7.5. Qualified, P20, race, P9. Gasly's debut weekend for Alpine could not have got off to a worse start when the Frenchman fell at the first hurdle in qualifying. But, to his credit, the ex-AlphaTauri driver rebounded admirably to make up 11 places on race day, and score 2 vital points to instantly open his account with his new team. Lando Norris, 7. Qualified, P11, race, P17. Norris was unsurprisingly able to extract the most out of a struggling MCL60 car to comprehensively beat his teammate by 0.6 in Q1, before then setting a time good enough for P11 in Q2. Unfortunately for the Brit, a pneumatic issue early in the race meant he had to make multiple pit stops throughout to even make it to the checkered flag. Without the recurring problem, Norris would surely have been in contention for a points finish otherwise, having already gained a place at the start. Oscar Piastri, 5.5. Qualified, P18, race, DNF. Piastri learned the hard way in his maiden F1 qualifying session that mistakes get punished, with the rookie's slight snap coming out of turn 2 bringing an early end to his Saturday evening endeavors. Nevertheless, he was making solid progress at the start of his first ever Grand Prix and had passed Nico Hülkenberg's Haas for P13, until an electronic issue forced him into an unfortunate retirement. Valtteri Bottas, 8. Qualified, P12, race, P8. He may not have been able to repeat the exploits that yielded a 6th-place finish on his Alfa Romeo debut from last year, but crossing the line in 8th still left Valtteri Bottas pleased. Making up positions on the opening lap and the team's choice to go aggressive on strategy was the key to the Finn unlocking the improved race day potential of the Alfa Romeo C45 car. Guan Yu Zhu, 6. Qualified, P13, race, P16. Unlike his Alfa Romeo partner, Zhu didn't get away optimally as he suffered wheel spin at the start, dropping him several places. That momentary lapse culminated in him then getting stuck in doctor's trains and being resigned to a subdued evening showing. The Chinese racer's end result was eventually skewed by a late pit stop to steal the fastest lap point away from Alpine. However, it didn't impact the pointless return he was already set for. Fernando Alonso, 9.5. Qualified, P5, race, P3. After several years spent in the wilderness of the midfield in uncompetitive and unreliable machinery, Alonso finally appears to have a car that can enable him to mix it at the sharp end on a consistent basis. Although Alonso conceded 2 positions in the opening exchanges, the Spaniard rallied to reclaim those lost places, including a lovely setup move on Hamilton into the tight, downhill left-hander at turn 10. The superb long-run pace of the Aston Martin, and its strength in preserving the tyres better than its immediate competitors facilitated Alonso's successful pursuit of a flailing signs to grab a merited podium on his Aston Martin debut. Lance Stroll, 8. Qualified, P8, race, P6. Considering Stroll was still evidently struggling in the aftermath of his cycling accident, only 2 weeks prior to the race weekend during Friday practice, being within 0.5s of Alonso in qualifying and then finishing inside the top 6 represented a monumental effort, other than over-exuberance on the brakes causing slight contact with his teammate on the first lap. The Canadian's performance was largely faultless. A well-executed move on Russell to take 6th was undoubtedly the highlight of a confidence-boosting return to action for Stroll, who will be aiming to support Alonso in Aston Martin's continued attempts to upset the sport's established order. Kevin Magnussen, 5. Qualified, P17, race, P13. While Magnussen wasn't exactly expecting to be in a position to replicate the heroics of his F1 comeback last season, the Dane wouldn't have been anticipating qualifying so far down the order, almost 7/10 down on his teammate. In an attempt to make up ground, Haas elected to start Magnussen on the hard tyre. He was the only driver to do so, and the offset strategy would prove to be an uninspired choice. The Haas slipped to the rear of the field on the opening lap, leaving Magnussen past the point of being able to recover to a position where he ever threatened the points. Nico Hülkenberg, 5.5. Qualified, P10, race, P15. Hülkenberg hauling himself into the shootout for pole position looked set to be the catalyst for his return to full-time F1 action, producing a points finish. Sustaining minor damage to his front wing on the opening lap in the race, however, ended those hopes, leaving Haas frustrated that it didn't maximize what it hoped would be a good race car. Yuki Tsunoda, 7.5. Qualified, P14, race, P11. Tsunoda worked wonders in an underperforming AT04 car to reach Q2, and emphatically thrash his new AlphaTauri teammate NYCK de Vries by 7/10 in the process. However, the reward of getting into the second stage came at the cost of using up all his tires, leaving him without the opportunity to contend for an unexpected spot in Q3. The Japanese driver, now in his 3rd season, backed up his qualifying prowess with an honorable performance in the race to only end up 1 second short of stealing a point. NYCK de Vries, 4. Qualified, P19, race, P14. As one Dutchman soared to victory, the Netherlands' newest incumbent on the F1 roster failed to make quite the same impression as his native friend. De Vries struggled hugely with the constraints of the car, and subsequently ended up second best of the 2 AlphaTauri drivers by a landslide margin. The ex-Formula E champion suffered a resounding qualifying defeat to Tsunoda, along with then setting the slowest average race pace of all to mark a disappointing debut outing for AlphaTauri's latest recruit. Alex Albon, 8.5. Qualified, P15, race, P10. Without the front wing damage that curtailed his run in Q2, Albon could have been looking at a potential Q3 appearance in a car that had been tipped to be the slowest of all after testing. As it was, the Thai representative lined up in only P15 on the grid, but a surprise turn of speed from the FW45 in race trim powered Albon to an even stronger run in the race. After making up ground on the opening lap, he had improved on his starting slot by 4 places to be best placed to inherit a place inside the points when Leclerc's retirement promoted him up the order. In delivering Williams' best result at the first race of a season since 2017, Albon has continued where he left off last season as a valuable team leader for the Grove side. Logan Sargent, 7. Qualified, P16, race, P12. After missing out on a place in Q2 through the technicality of setting his lap time second to Norris, Sargent strung together a respectable race that culminated in him ending up the highest-placed rookie and only 9 seconds behind Albon. The largest amount of praise that can be attributed to the American newcomer, though, is how his F1 race day debut went largely under the radar. Sargent didn't commit any noticeable unforced errors typically expected of a driver making their Grand Prix debut, and he completed the race distance to get valuable mileage under his belt. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like, thumbs up, share and subscribing to our channel for more content like this. Goodbye.